Hello, hello, and welcome to my Substack Live today, Friday, end of the week, beginning of the end of the summer, 8/8. So exciting. Hey Karen. Uh, 8/8, if you pay attention to such things, is the Lionsgate portal. What they say is that it is a portal to potential. It is a great time to set intentions. And I mean, when isn't a great time to set intentions in that way? Anyway, we're here today. We're gonna do let's pink it up. Look at that, look at that. That'll make it sweeter. Um I'm gonna share about picking projects. I have a pick your next project Zoom mini masterclass coming up on the September 10th. September 10th, I have a Zoom mini masterclass of Pick Your Next Project coming up on September 10th. That's a Wednesday at 5 Pacific time, to be very specific. But today I wanted to talk about I kind of wanted to talk about why that I'm doing it and why it's so important to pick your next project. It's one part of the creativity process that I don't think is that focused on. People do focus on the writing once you decide and how to do, there's a lot of talk about how to do it, and there's a lot of talk about a lot of different things, but there isn't a lot of talk about actually choosing the project. And choosing the project is, of course, one of the key, if not the key element in it being successful. Every single thing you see, every bestseller, every hit, every most wonderful explosion of what's on the New York Times bestseller list, what's streaming number one. It's all a choice. Those things were all a choice. Now, just because you make a conscious choice doesn't guarantee that you're going to have bestseller. But without that choice, it's very unlikely. So the key is, and feel free to pop in your questions as you populate. The key is to know who you are. So Karen, you're here. If you have if you have what is happening here, by the way? Um, Pick your lipstick, Lapides. What about forget your projects? Pick your lipstick and put it on properly. What you want to do is be super conscious about who you are and what you're doing and why you're doing it. And the process that I've come up with, it's a pretty clear, there are a bunch of exercises. There's no quizzes. I'm so tired of quizzes. There's no quizzes, but thinking about who you are and why you're doing it and where you imagine your life going once you've done it. Those are all reasons. I was thinking, in some ways, picking a project is like falling in love. When you're deep into a project, um, it is a love relationship. You're in it so deeply, and you're so engaged in it that if you're not in love with it, it's kind of almost too it's too hard. I mean, the amount of work it takes to do anything, right? It's like if you can't feel the love while you're doing it, then why even bother? It's a love thing. It's really a love thing. So the things that you need to remember about picking a project, deciding, and I talk a lot about deciding itself in my book, so you need to decide. But deciding is related to all the other side words, not like sideboard or cyborg, but side, CIDE, and like homicide and suicide and those side words. And decide, you are in a sense killing off other options. And that is one of the reasons that it makes it super scary to make that decision. And one of the reasons why it's really helpful to have someone help you make those decisions. It might be me. It might be your agent, your manager, your best friends, your partners, but, generally, it is hard to make these decisions on our own just by ourselves, and, really good to have another set of eyes, set of hearts. Um, I'm really obsessing about this. Karen, you're the only one here. What is it? I got lipstick on, as, like, rushing around. Don't rush around, Lapides. Don't rush around. Alright, so, trying to figure out what you're gonna do, trying to understand why it's the right thing for you, why you're gonna do a project. Um, I feel like that is where a lot of people get hung up. That's why I do this, free mini masterclass. It's a great way for me to sort of connect with people who are starting to work on something new and see if, that you need someone else in your process with you to help it be, most productive and go better. So picking your next project, uh, committing, part of it has to do with, and like love, who are you gonna be? It's not just like who you like, it's who you're gonna be able to commit to. That's the love practice. Who is going to be someone that you can feel like in 10 years you're still interested in. You're curious about them. Curiosity is one of the reasons why you pick a project. You're curious about it. And that's often lacking. You can have a lot of good reasons without actually um, feeling it in your heart. Sometimes, they say somebody looks good on paper. That can be true of a project too. It makes all kinds of sense, and yet there's nothing in you that is compelling you to actually do it. So when you're working on the project of figuring out your project, part of it is you want to feel like what makes your heart go fast, what makes you want to do it, what are you excited about? Um, and there's various matrices for doing that, and various ways to decide. Um, Again, I would say Wednesday, September 10th. It's a 60 to 90 minutes, expansion tracks, uh, mini master class. We go through it, and you come out with either a really clear idea about what your project is gonna be, what your slate of projects is gonna be, because often it's not just one project. Um, you either come out with a super clear idea or at least a super clear idea about, "Hey, Bob," about what kind of questions you wanna ask about the project, what kinds of things that you want to figure out before you can pick a project. Like, maybe you're not ready, maybe you get to a stumbling block. So we go through that in the master class. What stumbling blocks are there between you and the project that you need to pick? And the problem with not picking a project, with just sort of working, is there is no boundary. And one of the things about momentum is that you really need boundaries. You need three things to create momentum. You need boundaries, you need actions, obviously, and you need a team. And so picking your projects, that's part of the boundary part of momentum. You have to be able to pick projects. And, what's really great is if you understand your project as part of a slate, because, most of us, I literally don't know anybody who works on one project at a time. And I include in projects, if you're creative that also has a day job or kids, or, um, you're a caretaker in any way. It could be for a parent, it could be for a spouse, it could be, for children. Caretaking is a project. So, you have to really say, okay, caretaking, that's part of my slate right now. And then maybe have room for a writing project or a visual, a film or, whatever your medium is. And then you have to figure out what other projects, sometimes you have some projects that are really short-term projects, and that could be, I love Substack. I try to write 1, 2, 3, or 4 a month. Try to stay on notes. So that's a project, that's a kind of a project, but it's not the same level of project as my pilot, and it's not the same kind of project as my solo show, and it's not the same kind of project as on Cabaret. And, all those things have very different components that make them work together. And you kind of, what can rub you raw is if you have too many projects that are similar. So you don't want to be writing 4 pilots. That's too much of the same energy. But if you're doing stand up, say, and you're trying to go out to clubs at night and you're doing sets, that would be a very different energy from writing a novel. Those 2 things might go hand in hand, or they might be too opposite for you to carry at once, but they wouldn't butt up against each other in terms of, "Hey, Janet." They wouldn't butt up against, and, kids, write in any questions if you have them. Um, just talking here about kind of the thoughts behind the Pick Your Next project that's coming up, the mini masterclass. And I was happy to see you're coming, Janet. That's so sweet. It'll be so exciting to have you there. It's been a minute. Um, so so picking consciously so that you can have either a project that you can pour everything into or a slate of projects that exists happily together. Because like I say, you don't want to be writing 3 novels at the same time, but a novel um plus maybe short stories, or maybe stand up plus a solo show. Those 2 things would go together pretty nicely. And trying to make sure that things feed into each other so that they're not, you wanna pick a slate. I'm really starting to think about how to help people find slates to work on, not just singular projects. Singular projects first, picking a project, and then also understanding how that project exists in your whole slate of projects. And again, projects being everything from caretaking to, caring for an archive to, a script is different than stand up, is different than, trying to get staff. If you're trying to get staffed, or you're an actor trying to get cast, that is a project, working on getting cast. So, really being honest about what is requiring your energy and what you want to pour yourself into, and how that integrates with the other things that you're doing in your life. So that is really a holistic approach to um, developing, it's what a network used to call a slate. Really, what is your garden? You're not going to just grow, well, you might, because I do love roses. Maybe you do want to grow all roses, but even so, you're going to have different plants probably. I do love a mass planting. I got to tell you, I do love a lot of one thing, but still, I'm going to say, in general, for a human being, given attention span. So are you writing a very deep, involved memoir, diving deep into your past? And does sometimes that make you feel too far away from the present? Does that make you want to write haiku about the present? Does that want to get you into stand-up clubs? Do stand-up clubs sometimes seem too surfacey? And so sometimes you want to go deeper and be writing a pilot. Does writing a pilot feel pointless because uh, Hollywood is insane, then maybe, you wanna do something you have more control of or write a memoir that you know that in the end you could actually publish yourself. So that's one way to determine the kinds of things that, being part of it is just really being honest about what each project, um requires, what your strong points as a human being really are, and what are your weak points. I'm working with a dramaturg now, somebody who, this is actually so much fun, who is on your team is a big part of, I always keep going back to this, the three things it takes for momentum is, boundaries, actions, and team. And, I was in the process of looking for a director, and the woman who directed the Cabaret for Comedy Central lives in New York, so she wasn't in my mind, but she kept popping in my mind. So that kind of repeated thought I always pay attention to. And I just picked up the phone one day, and we hadn't talked in so long, and we were back at it. One thing I love about working with her is she really understands my strengths, and she understands, I'll call them weaknesses, but everybody has things that they are, and they're usually really super connected, your strengths and your weaknesses. Like, I love a spiral. It's how I write. I find linearity not to be a challenge, and also to be, um, this is something I haven't really talked about publicly yet, but I'm thinking about this idea of, we have this idea of, the trauma narrative, which is the story of your life based in your trauma. But I'm also thinking about narrative trauma, not trauma narrative, like the trauma of turning your life into this linear narrative. It can be very reductive and feel like you're really trying to squish your life into this kind of the flattened thing, rather than how I think life is really much more of a spiral. And I love a spiral, and I can easily spiral off into a million different things. And so the trick for me in writing is often, reining in my spirals without eliminating them. So I need to work with somebody who is really sensitive to that, and Sue really is. So sort of strengths and weaknesses, and often the weakness is the strength. Um, so, figuring out your team, figuring out your slate, figuring out the biggest picture, but always coming back to this kernel of, what is that core? What is the core of what you wanna be working on? Where is the fire? So what is the spark? What coming to discover what the spark is. So we go through a whole process in the mini master class about, discovery and finding things, and, I even did make a workbook. I made a workbook. What can I tell you? It was fun. So figuring out really where you are, what the question is, sometimes why you haven't chosen. What is it that you're avoiding? Have you made a decision and just not wanted to admit it? Sometimes you really know what you have to do. You know what the project is, and you can kind of see how hard it's going to be. And the seeing how hard the project is going to be can be off-putting. Um, a lot of times when people come to me also, they've chosen a project, been really excited about it, gotten into and then, ooh, there's that other project. That one's so shiny. Um, the shiny new thing, the shiny object syndrome. So there you are, you have the idea, you've sparked to the idea, you're in it, you're enthusiastic. Inevitably, you're going to come up against the problem. You're going to come up against the, hey, Jason, you're going to come up against the difficulty. You're going to come up against the confusion, the chaos, the uncertainty. This is not because of you. This is because that's the process. This is because, I have to say, my manager has this great thing. He calls it, the well of despair. That there's this excitement, and then that you enter the well of despair. And in the well of despair, he says, and I really do love this. He said, he caught me in it, and then I've been able to help other people. Anyway, here's the thing. So you're excited, then you enter this well of despair. You're excited. Maybe you even sold a book. Maybe you've sold your show. Maybe you've gotten cast. Maybe you have a date for your show. The flyers are, you then the well of despair, the confusion. You thought it was so clear, but now it's not. And now the amount of energy that it's going to take you to kind of, it's like that skateboarder thing to sort of, you're in that lull to get yourself out of the well of despair. That momentum, that's part of the momentum, and that's the action part of the momentum, that what it takes to really make things happen. So getting out of the well of despair, that kind of energy can really help you sail through the rest of the project. But I don't know, I can't tell you that there's one clear point where the shiny object syndrome happens. It might be in that well of despair. Why did you even pick this project? It's so hard. It's not right. The structure isn't clear and this character doesn't work. Or why are you even on stage? I will say this, that one of the main questions that you have to answer before you pick your next project is you have to really accept that you're going to pick a project. Sometimes people come to pick your next project, really the question in their head, their heart, their soul is, should I do any project? Should I just quit? People come to me all the time. Should I quit? Should I quit? Should I quit? What's the point? Should I quit? And I have to say, there is really nothing more draining than should I quit? And generally, I will say the answer is no. If you wanted to quit, you would have just quit. You wouldn't have come to me to ask me, should I quit? And I mean, whether there are 4 people watching you, whether you have an audience of 1 million, whether I'm in a theater with this many or this many, whether the book is, it doesn't matter, because number one, more people see it later. That's number one, almost always. Not live performance, but maybe, video, whatever. It lives on in some egoistic way. Is that a word? Egoistic? It might be. Um, and once I've watched this happen with so many clients. Once you take should I quit off the table, suddenly all this energy about what you should do instead of if you should quit. So I always really say, can you take, should I quit off the table? Because it's going to go so much better for us. It's going to be so much better for you in your work. If you can just take, maybe I should quit off the table. Hey, Ray. Because, hey, Dash, am I saying that right? Dashk is observing. Hi, Dashk. So don't quit. I mean, the other reason I would give you the pep talk about not quitting is because, look, the world, if there's one thing the world needs, it's more art. That's it, period, the end. Art, the hope of art. Art, here, one of the things about hope, and art really is, it's on the cover of that book, Art Quotes, art is the highest form of hope. Believe it. I believe it. It takes so much hope to make art. And one of the things about hope, and one of the reasons it's so challenging to be a hopeful person, is that hope is messy. Hope is, despair is very neat. Nihilism is adorably neat. It's so clean. It's such a absolute no is so neat. Believe I'm not against neatness. I strive to be neater, but I don't strive to be neater in my hope despair, as this in the spectrum of hope and despair. The messiness of hope, because hope is possibility, and possibility is squirrely. Possibility isn't a line. Possibility is a spiral. It's not as easy to comprehend. It's not a point. Um, hope is maybe this, maybe that, maybe. So I know there are a lot of people when I first, engaged in my work to be more hopeful. I have to say I was a little skeptical about hope in general, and felt hope was about the future, and I'm a yogi and I'm about the present and blah, blah, blah. And there is a thing in Hollywood, I've heard people say it's the hope that'll kill you. Maybe this pilot, maybe this script, maybe I'll get cast next week. I almost got this, oh, what about me? I almost had, my talk show and then it was greenlit and then it didn't. So is that despairful or hopeful? Cause I got close, but so it's the hope that'll kill you, but is it the hope that'll kill you or is it the despair? I actually have found that the more hopeful I am, the more life I feel within me. So, there's also the question about hope, and this isn't exactly about picking your next project, but it kind of is because you do want to feel hopeful about the choices that you make. And I would say that there is something about manifestation that has to do with certainty, the unknowingness, and a knowingness that is different than a hope. But I would say that in order to really be fully engaged as a creator, you almost need to know certainly and hopefully. There are two kinds of knowing that interplay. I know that's not super clear, and I don't have a matrix or a triangle or an acronym to tell it to you in, but I can encourage you to play with for yourself the um the balance between what you know about what you want to do, what you're certain of, and what you can feel. There is a thing about knowing certainty, and then um, you can't ever know everything, right? Because if you knew it all, you wouldn't bother making it. The joy of making it is being just surprised. You so have to surprise yourself. So you want to choose projects when you're picking your projects that feel like I know no triangle. I know I'm going to work on that one. It's just it's flummoxing, but it might be Ray. It might be the first square, and maybe there's an octagon coming. There might be a more complex situation. But I will say that if you knew it all, if you knew what you were going to make entirely before you made it, you wouldn't bother making it because the joy of making it is the delight in surprising yourself, surprising the audience, um, surprising your bank account in some cases, but the delight of discovery. And that's why, being on stage with the same material, although I love the surprise of new material, I am really working on the solo show because I would also like to have the surprise of, you know, being able to have a piece of developed material and the performance of it is a surprise. And that's why you see actors all the time being plays and being in the moment, and how each when you do a show, it's so crazy how the same thing can be different time after time. I mean, you can feel it if you just take a walk around your block. It's that same walk around your same block, and yet you notice different things. The season changes, the light changes, you've changed. So the outside thing changes and the inside thing changes, and that changes the experience. You can look at the day, and even though it's not a performance, it's a painting, all complete, it can look different every time. It's telling me my internet stable is in unstable. My internet connection is unstable. That's because I'm talking about being unstable. My internet connection responded and became unstable. That's the thing about hope. It's not about stability. But stability is so important. And you want to be able to find in your balance of projects, you do want to find some things that might help you feel stable while you're experimenting. So there's so many different variables, and every person is different. And, so I have a process and I can take you through your process, but there isn't like one reason I do it with people and one reason of the groups and the one-on-one work with people is because, and why I've really resisted turning this into, a lot of coaching is like, here's the system and you go through it. You don't even need me. I'll just put it up on Teachable or, one of those things is because, there are some things you could take a quiz and find out. I'm not saying there aren't, but I do really respect and value and love the personal aspects of what it is to be an artist, how it is really different for Jason or Ray or Janet or Beth, or, that our processes are, I love that the process has some things that are knowable and shareable and sayable, that I can help you say, oh, it's the well of despair. Oh, it's the triangle of momentum. Oh, it's, all the different things. But in the end, when you look at your memoir and trying to figure out whether to do your memoir, maybe you're going to have questions like, there's someone in my family still alive about it. There's somebody then that, and I'm nervous about that. Maybe you're going to look at like the story feels stale. It happened too long ago. Maybe you're going to look at like, if I don't tell this story, I'm going to feel like I've never really fully understood the story. I mean, and that is one of the reasons for storytelling, so you can understand the story. And that is such a gift. So to go back to what I was saying a little bit earlier, um, should I do it at all, or should I maybe quit? And my answer being, if you're asking that question, you should not quit, because if you wanted to quit, you would have just quit. And the world really needs art. When I say art, I mean entertainment. I mean comedy. I mean beautiful drawings. I mean sand drawings. I mean cartoons. I mean watercolors. I mean all of it. Because not only is art the highest form of hope, but it is through, this connectivity, that we will survive and flourish. Science is doing so many incredible things. I mean, in my feed all day long, every day I get things like they've discovered concrete that's creating oxygen, turning CO2 into oxygen. Your sidewalk is going to act like a tree. I mean, it's so, it turns out bee stings, are absolutely cure breast cancer. It turns out, but these things are just being discovered and haven't all made their way to the and there's all this static that's keeping what would be the most beautiful world to live in. I think that people are afraid. Honestly, I do think people are afraid. And I have felt this myself a little bit. What about if we lived in utopia? Would it be bland? Maybe people aren't afraid of that. Maybe I'm afraid of that. Um, what if everything was worked out? Human emotion is still emotion. And believe me, there's going to be broken hearts whether or not the sidewalks create CO2. The human story and human evolution, and listening to the telepathy tapes, and, reading minds, and what does it mean to be human? What is our place in the universe? I mean, these are questions that artists are for, as well as scientists. I remember though, I can't remember which spaceship it was that went up. One of the spaceships, I really don't know. It's not that I can't remember, it's that I don't know. Two different things. One of the spaceships went up, and one of the scientists said, like, there are no words. How could we? Yeah, I can't remember what she said, but it was like, how are there no words? It can't be written about. Nobody could possibly describe it. I was like, yeah, some people could, but those people aren't scientists. Those people are writers. You got to send the poets up there. You got to send the writers up there. You got to send the artists up there. Only through artists going up are we going to actually start to understand what that next thing is. I mean, myself, any given day, I can think about infinity and what the universe is, and what are the relationship of the macrocosm to the microcosm, and how does the cells, how does every cell mirror the universe, and what does the universe mirror, and how far does it go, and are we really tiny, or are we giant? Where's our, what scale are we really in? What is really happening there? There has to be an edge to the universe, but then there can't be. So that, it's it's all through this like loop of like science and art, and science knowing more and artists understanding. And so your writing, and uh your hair, doing all the things that you do, that is the experience. You have the experience of trying to create some sort of order and and hope and beauty. And at the bottom of it all is this question of what are you going to work on? And that is, I can't answer every question, but I do have a very good track record of helping people figure out what it is they should work on, and a very good track record then of helping them work on that thing. But without even the helping them work, just the helping people pick. Um, the very first time I think I did help somebody pick was with Jessica Bendinger took me out to lunch and said, she was just a friend, and she was like, "Which of these movies should I do?" And she pitched me 3 movies, and I was like, "Oh my God, do the cheerleader one." And that movie turned out to be Bring It On. And, she was like, that was very helpful. You definitely were right about that. And that kind of figuring out, how to help people do which projects. I don't know why. That is a little bit, I think of it as like falling in love, and I'm a little bit of a matchmaker. Why are people good at that? I don't know. So I'm a little bit of a matchmaker for artists and their projects. And so I invite you to pick your next project. I know I'm going to see some of you there already. Those of you, if you have questions about it, DM me, absolutely. Reach out. There's an Eventbrite link. It is free because it's a great way for me to meet the people who, would be a great fit for working together for a year. It's also just a great way for me to give back and help people who are going to go off and do it on their own. That's all good. And it's a great way for me to really continue developing, articulating what is my gut feeling and how could I explain that? So all those things happen. Usually great synergy. And it's a nice group. It's not usually too enormous, and everybody gets a little bit of focused attention. We don't, it's not a roll up your sleeves giant spotlight, but often there's time for me to help a little bit hands on, and we go from there. So these are an experiment for me, these Substack lives, and I thank you very much for being here. And I'm still trying to figure out what time is the best time. I'm thinking Friday afternoon, maybe at 2 is maybe not the best time. I'm going to try to do it in the middle of the week, maybe next time. And but maybe it is the perfect time. Maybe everything is unfolding in divine and perfect order. What better time is there? I hope that you find projects and have projects, and if not, come to me and let me help you pick your perfect project and your perfect slate. Maybe helping you eliminate a project or two, and that's it for today, and I will see you next time. Take good care of yourselves, and thanks for being here. Bye for now.